Hello, everybody. And thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Camilla Nelson, and I'm welcoming you to the next hour of readings curated by UK Presses in support of Palestinian writers, Palestinian voices in diaspora, and their allies. We gather in the spirit of fundamental respect for life and liberation as individual poets, artists, and writers, and we call for an end to all ongoing genocidal aggression globally. We condemn the collective punishment of Palestinians. We condemn actions that perpetuate cycles of violence, and we call for a global commitment to freedom of expression and critical dissent. The poem that I'm going to read now came out of my collaboration with the Palestinian dancer Khaled Barghouti. This piece was written having been welcomed into Palestine by Khaled's whole family and to many other Palestinians I met during the Ramallah International Dance Festival, who so kindly hosted us. My love goes out to all of you and all of your families. May you be safe and may you be well. Occupation. His heart is a fist-shaped pupil that struggles to adjust to the darkness. You learn to be occupied by a certain type of language, checkpoint, by a certain type of movement, checkpoint. The creeping settlements, the other seeps in, and we are conditioned to welcome them, checkpoint. To give our land over, checkpoint. To make them a home, checkpoint. We must resist. We must learn to resist. I will learn to speak a language not my own, always othered by another's words, choking on their phrases, absorbing, soaking, sponging, till there's nothing left but the rage and the rage and the rage of swallowing sentences not mine, of choking on my own and always asking, always for my own page, for my own space, and getting nothing but ink and more ink, nothing but your blackened tongue in my mouth. And still I find a way to speak, from between your teeth, from out of your eyes, from inside your heart. I speak with my bones, with my veins, with my skin, from the pit of my stomach. How can we find the strength to offer a self that is not white or black, but blue, red, pink, orange, green, to utter ourselves completely with only a noise and a... His heart is a fist-shaped pupil that struggles to adjust to this darkness. I want to now hand over to the next 6 live poets that we have in this UK curated section. We have Sascha Akhtar,
Do you want to write it down?
Carpenter, Sam Walton, Rhys Trimble, and Rob Kiely. I'm hoping we'll have Lucy Mercer as well. But the next person we will have on now is Sascha Akhtar. Welcome.
Yes.
Sascha, feel free to go ahead.
Today, the only poetry possible, in fact, the only writing possible, is terrorism. Everything else is advertising. Terrorism does not exist. It is wholly a state fabrication, a racist, white supremacist and patriarchal fabrication used in order to delegitimize organized resistance to capitalism, patriarchy and white supremacism. Its use in the UK today is an Islamophobic construct applied immediately to any black or brown person who engage in any organized political activity, especially national liberation struggle, is not so different from how it was used against the Irish people in the UK previously. And indeed against South American liberation fighters by the USA as an Islamophobic construct today, it is wielded not just by UK, USA, NATO, but also by any other imperialist and capitalist power, e.g. Russia in Chechnya, Israel with Palestine, China with the Uyghur, India with Kashmir, the list goes on. Certainly those who kill in the name of white power are only very reluctantly dubbed as terrorists, or the man that killed women as an incel terrorist, are mostly justified through explanations of mental or some kind of illness. The killer of Joe Cox by Britain First into 2016 being a good example, where even the mention of Britain First involvement was covered up. The success of terrorism with its associated constructs such as radicalism depends on its vagueness, defined as the use of violence by a non-state actor to bring about change in state policy. It can easily include most forms of peaceful protest and democratic processes. Indeed, the Prevent framework in the UK has already criminalised various left-wing political groups who advocate non-violent direct action, such as Stop the War, IWW, XR, and various other left-wing groups identified by the British police as signs of radicalisation. And therefore, the definition of violence is not just spurious, but controversial, but also antithetical to opposing political perspectives. This is evident if we look at the historical uses of the terms terror, its association with the French Revolution, and even etymologically with the earth, terra firma, and radical as a political tradition of the left, as Marx said, grasping the matter by the root. The avant-garde had realized this back in the 90s before the war on terror began, and so there had begun a kind of negative reclamation by the radical art movements in the West, including the right, the alt-right, such as Hakeem Bey's Poetic Terrorism 1985, Heath Bunting's Cultural Terrorist Agency in 1999, or Stuart Holmes' Mind Invaders, a reader in psychic warfare, cultural sabotage and semiotic terrorism, shows how this was a conceptual tool with a wide range of applications in terms of performance art, interventionist art and activism, by which the contemporary avant-garde was formulating its opposition to hegemonic culture. Like many parts of society after 9/11, and the start of the so-called war against terror by the USA, this position for the avant-garde became increasingly tenuous, and the arrest of various artists under terror charges is no surprise that it was a defender of bourgeois art like Stockhausen who claimed 9/11 as a triumphant work of art itself. This in itself is nothing new for avant-garde debates about modernity and art, the avant-garde always being a meeting ground of the left and the right, but it is evident that the use of shock in the media by Stockhausen was used to instrumentalize prejudice against art workers. The most known example, most immediate target was Steve Kurtz, at the time arrested in the USA, along with other members of the critical art ensemble. Heath Bunting, who was researching genetic and biological art, was also arrested during this period and was banned for life from the USA. Some groups, however, continued with a radical and direct avant-garde political and cultural confrontation of the state myth of terrorism, such as space hijackers, for example, buying a tank to bring to the arms fair protests in 2005, C6.org with their Bomb Soho, Bomb London graffiti campaigns in 2002, and more recently, the Asemic International released their terrorist manifesto of Asemic writers, which the Psychic Workers Union, Data Miners, Travailleurs Psychiques, published as a provocation in Cassar in 2017. There are, of course, many examples continuing around the world. The so-called post-Soviet actionist movement has been one of the main fronts of this kind of work during the period of very high-handed state control in the West and the East. Artists such as Oleg Sentsov, arrested under terror charges in 2015 in the Ukraine, and of course, Pyotr Pavlensky continue to be censored by the state using terrorist legislation as their tool. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next up, we have got a reading from J.R. Carpenter.
Hello, thank you. Thank you to all of the organizers. I'm really happy to be here. I'm going to read some portions from a long call and response piece that's written in collaboration with Mary Patterson, who can't be here with me. The piece is about migration. We're both intergenerational survivors of the Holocaust, the Nazi Holocaust. And so part of Mary's practice is to ask unanswerable questions, and part of my practice is to try to answer them anyway, because speaking about the unspeakable with someone comes as a relief. Which way is west? Where is the ocean in relation to the moving body, to the migrant? Where once was land, now low sunsets in to vast water. How slow is a curve? The delayed train slows its way around the wide bay. How many places are there in your name? No places. A name displaces. A word before a body, after a great aunt, by a father who left, his mother, a ghost neighbor, his widow, a sidestep, after the facts, after the math. What is the name for a great half-step queer fracture? What will you leave behind? An archive of half-truth versions, draft fragments, files, folders, failures. The bay as the train slows onwards, the notion that west is landwards. What are you waiting for? Something recognizable, something familiar to hold against so much newness, a sense of belonging, of home. When are you going to slow down? When will it feel safe to? When belonging happens? When quiet commences? When sun setting, not rising, setting over vast water starts to feel normal? How fast is a line? The train slows its way along a line of coast, on course, but not on time. Of course, the body slows with it, but the mind races ahead along lines of flight, of code, of memory, of poetry, of inquiry. Who is missing you? This we can never know. The shape we make in the mind of another. A lover missing the point, tone, intonation is no longer loving listening. A mother who does not, will not, cannot say, and so creates an absence. Years of missing with me. Who is missing in me? What is beyond your body? The spoken word escapes the body as breath and immediately is captured. Thing-like, it hangs frozen in the air on a cold morning, carves a path on a wax cylinder, wakes waves on water, displays green peaks and valleys on digital monitors, tickles the stereocilia of another body. Spiraling toward an inner ear, the spoken word becomes part body again, mingling air, hair, fluid, and flesh. What is too small to be seen? A moment, a movement, a process occurring within the spectrum of the already invisible. A change of temperature, a quickening of pace of pulse, of breath, of wind, an electrical current. What is traceable from above? Where does above start? with the wind blowing above the ocean's currents, flowing above tectonic plates, floating above liquid magma encircling the Earth's molten core, with our planet's orbit around the sun, with the sun's slow arc in a dark galaxy, still unfolding its incomprehensibly ancient wings. I'll leave there. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, JR. That was fantastic. Next up, we have a video from Sam Walton, who unfortunately can't join us live, but was able to record this for us. So over to Sam.
Hi everyone, I am having some technical problems and some logistical problems today, which is why I'm recording this in my car. But yeah, solidarity to everybody reading today, solidarity to everybody marching, solidarity to everybody in Palestine. Yeah, this reading is dedicated to you all and to your struggle for liberation and freedom and rights. I haven't written a poem about Palestine, but I have written a poem about oil infrastructure in Scotland, and I think it's really important to understand this context, this aggression in lots of different contexts, but certainly in relation to environmental rights and to fossil economy. So I will just read this poem. It's called Sea Lock. My steel heart is broken, but I have veins into the valleys. Soap bottles clog my burning mouth, but the silt I smelt is under your head, is the groove of your earliest bedrock. I cross asphalt at dusk to find you. I brave white lines soaring under me, and the way my eyes stream hydrocracker. I can see you by the lights of your spine. The curve of the earth is the hand you cup, is the love you siphon. We've grown together, not travelled, but seen flashes ascend, touched another land like the hope of the huff of delirium. Our stale sweat, tender and entrenched, is conquering, like nerves, a nation. We're out of touch of flares tonight, sated by each other's breath and bristling from the intimacy of a true north sky. This town is a dead weight, but not a burden. The high street is alight, and houses hug the ground they grew from. We are piped into privacy and sunk by the carbon we maintain. Two hopeless lovers bruising the frozen pitch, shattering shutters. Every bus shelter here is petrified exodus. Swinging our legs over the geometric unshore, grazing our nylons in the shallow wake, we turn up ships like old peaked soldiers. Ash for eyes, ash lungs, freight sunk by hub artery. Commodity fresh, but blood adhesive, rock oil. Our raft of the Medusa exit strategy is drunk in sulphur. Sulphur never to be admired fire spears, efflorescent in upturned antique skies, raising plains, or cosseted in neat script. Recipes for purification, held close to the chest plate in the cherished and salt-splattered Liber Ignium, Book of Fires. The earthwork is still high. Our defensive sod and clot the berm we sink into, our scrap elbows consumed by, not piercing, the protective wall of shame. In the distance, the cooling towers of the free zone turn up dust, while the ochres shimmer purple and blue slate. Our cat's cradle geographies are becoming more refined, airborne ideas woven into the fabric of the glow, silent but catalytic. In our post-union attic, crude romance flares unhinged, with the all-night show ended. Polyester curtains hum orange. Thanks so much for including me in this reading. It's a real honour to share space with you all. Free Palestine.
Thank you so much to Sam Walton. And next up we have Rhys Trimble.
Cyd safon gyda Palestina. Ffrwydriad tawel. Silent explosion. Ever felt a flame around your hand? Tarn and Tanganelli, burn underlines, Tarn and Tikian, fire crack, Llosgi llais, conflagration. Llosgi, di-sugar, plasma, impurity, plasma, rwygo, flam, llosg, aberthwr. Burn, sacrifice and fire. Burn, sacrifice, optimization of burning. Plasma, a system study was undertaken to find the please scroll, enforce deliberately the artist, tymhestel or flammai. Here. Great quested, storm, petrol, glidwaith, collage, cloud, sugar, sooty and file, podfor, a gelvine, a melon, I deliver, heart, national, number, insurance, fedwin, goreskin, erchill, a plasma experiment to address additions, fusion, redistribution, alpha heating, fusion to address, reignitor, ignitor, Aries reignitor, Pam Vintirio internationally, auto-destructive art in itself, an oxymoron. Radical, reeve D, radical, return, insith, reeve, straight, arena, erg, and regulation. Bolt, call, soil, Fred, nothing can please, drum, germaloon, animals, older than I, prrrr, ring, gwrth, dŵr, swlth, zero burn, Owen burn, tawel burn, heb llosgi, extra llosgi, eve llosgi, by llosgi, cwr llosgi, meta llosgi, extra llosgi, hyperlosgi, rwygo flam, Heraclitan fire, like literary hiraniaeth, like those waters, Orion, what I went was balm. Overt is razzle, air stella, Duran, agolai, stan glor, pwy sy'n gelyn, who's the enemy, who is agwedd Shiva, act, activity. We will walk around the grounds, interior, we will twyll, astrich, Delhi, your coedwig, your Prussian, losing yourself in accretional cartographies, you're losing yourself, piss factory light splat, you're losing yourself in fires. You are gaining yourself, and you are losing yourself in fires. You will gain, your sacrifice will be given further impetus. Tang nevedd, a point which I know what you're losing yourself in. How can I turn during I'm using an environment for cleaning materiality, pocket, landism, I'm very, Caron, dwy breth o digydd uwch synabl rydd, digydd uwch cyllell, ploys, fluence, puckered and plasmatic, sound, shun, marrow, white burner, black marrow, tymhesel or flammai. You need to cry out your illness, I saw ember, deliquides, flame without a flame, windbone, playing without playing, windbone, a palm of light. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Rhys. That was great. Next up in our live readers, we have Rob Kiely. Welcome, Rob.
Hi, thanks very much, Camilla, and thanks to all the organisers and Daniel and Vincent, all the poets who have read and will read, and all the poets who can't make it, and all the poets who we've lost. I'm going to start with one of my own and then read something by Bobby Sands. It's from the Book of Psalms, a perverse title. Trails. Put down a deposit and then a surveyor says it's unlivable. It's different and it's the same. Someone says it's unlivable. They'd do it here too. The mouth a gash in a plastic bag, a still small liquid voice of calm, begging, pleading, shouting. In the eulogies, they'll say things like promising, call it aid without a ceasefire. They'll do it here too. grass yellows to die, guides us. Poems, songs do such brutal things. They, who reside in the passive, keep divvying things up. We must set things side by side by side. There are certain facts. The facts condition, intersect, and glance right off our language. Like the Great Oxidation Event, or the 1981 Wimpy bombing in London's Oxford Street, or Suella Braverman's concern over some chants, or the Cambrian explosion, or a tweet from Mira Matar, or the destruction of Al Ali Arab Hospital, or the new season of Frasier. We'll build anthologies of facts so varied, vast, their stupid world will cave in on itself. The world of warmongers, murderers, genociders, fast and slow. Their facts, ours facts, side by side, like rubble, like grass, like ash. Do you feel that? That's from 24th of October. And now one from Bobby Sands. It's called Comrades in the Dark. There came a splendid golden sun across the darkened skies. It woke the bondsman from his dream as it fell upon his eyes. It lit the ways of freedom's path, sent forth the singing lark, and bore a weeping bosom upon the flowers in the dark. They bloomed by country lane and town in freedom's fragrant scent, giving heart to a weary folk when dark days came and went. And grew they strong and beautiful, midst fortune cold and stark. The fairest flowers of their kind, these roses of the dark. The winds of war came sweeping cruel, the blossom would not cry. Oh, how it broke the freeman's heart to see the first rose die. Some soldiers plucked the garden's joy and left a burning mark upon the silver-petaled bloom, now fettered in the dark. These flowers weep in dank, cold cells, no sun to light the gloom. They suffer torture's vilest scorn to wither in their bloom. But ne'er they yield these lovely things, oh, here they freedom's mark. They are the light to guide the poor, these flowers in the dark. I care not should we free men die to see the garden flower, and humble bluebells lift their heads to rise in all their power. I hold a tear, torn sore and heart, 'twere e'er a Joan of Arc. 'Tis each of these saintly flowers who be in dungeon dark. And another two from me. Lessons. There are things in the history wind tunnel. There's no transition in the fossil record. The soft bits don't get preserved. There's some things in the dark, and history cannot overcome them. The society of missed boats under permanent siege. Money has mouths, but says nothing, and there's this speech, and all possible histories cannot overcome it. You see saws and shells. The soft bits don't get preserved. They don't have to. Preservation is for the sales and transport departments. They don't send in paramilitaries. They don't have to. The soft bits, reading groups, workshops. Spit out the hard bits. There's something in the dark. The darkness cannot overcome it. This unforgivable sky. And the last one, sour and knowing, Samantha. Released from blades, from fallen knees, it accrues, just let it through, smudged and rubbed, like any canvas primed. We'll never make that mistake the first time. Peek a slice of each incognito night, luck on a stalk hangs over you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much, Rob. Next up, we have a block of poets who couldn't be reading live with us today, and they will just play straight through. So I'll introduce them all now. First, we will have Rezia Wahid, then David Hurd, then Fran, Antoine Cassar, and then Caroline Bergvall.
I'm going to read two poems by Mossab Abu Toha, who is a Palestinian poet, short story writer, and essayist from Gaza. He was detained by Israeli troops while he was trying to get out and into Egypt. Thankfully, he is now released. My grandfather and home. My grandfather used to count the days for return with his fingers. He then used stones to count. Not enough. He used clouds, birds, people. Absence turned out to be too long. 36 years until he died. For us, now it is over 70 years. My grandpa lost his memory. He forgot the numbers, the people. He forgot home. I wish I were with you, Grandpa. I would have taught myself to write to you. Poems, volumes of them, and paint our home for you. I would have sewn you from soil, a garment decorated with plants and trees you had grown. I would have made you perfume from the oranges and soap from the sky, tears of joy. Couldn't think of something purer. I go to the cemetery every day. I look for your grave, but in vain. And are you sure they buried you? Or did you turn into a tree? Or perhaps you flew with a bird to nowhere? I place your photo in an earthenware pot. I water it every Monday and Thursday at sunset. I was told you used to fast those days. In Ramadan, I water it every day for 30 days or less or more. How big do you want our home to be? I can continue to write poems until you are satisfied, or you wish I can annex a neighboring planet or two. For this home, I shall not draw boundaries, no punctuation marks. Next poem. Memories are flowers. Memories are flowers. We water them, narrate them, turn them into poems, into plays, into stories. We decorate them with light bulbs, with metaphors of different hues, in variant clubs. Some memories are nasty. They have rank smells and coarse, prickly skin. No matter how deeply inhumed the bones, the worm of sweet memories shall find their way.
Sorry I can't join you live for this reading for freedom of expression and for solidarity with Palestine. I'm currently walking with Refugee Tales, and so I'm sending this recording instead. Here are 3 poems from the sequence Songs from the Language of a Declaration, where the declaration is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. At the time when it was committed and the state knew impunity, designated arbitrarily under the authority of the court. At that time, as it was meant, as the change was realized upon us, legislated against the landscape, that time it was broken, as people thought. Even as the colors held good and the seasons stretched out regular towards us. So this was summer, and still it was possible our democracy could fall hard against the grass, as it was recognized the change was upon us, bloodless against the lilacs, even as the language formed, even as we drove ourselves across the state, witness to a million particulars. The day the wind dropped, and as though we were waiting, the geese came through, called against the light. At that time when the brushings were upon us, beside the graves against the mountains, it was violence that people knew. As if it was that they were witness to that fact, and as if it was possible to lift from history, stutter into the discourse against the authority of the court, that time it dawned, the change was suddenly upon us, startled into language, people fought in a full equality. To anybody who would imagine a full equality, who would listen against the backdrop as the earth turns softly at dead of night, would sing the outline of an algorithm, would gesture towards their lover, would know at least their lover yearns, if not exactly for the same, who would stand there as the crowd assembles, as the boat rocks against the distance, and whereas the state turns back, would be held as once they had, or at least as they imagined holding, in the half-light of the polity, before they heard the polity collapse, or at least as they imagined that it might, who would know perhaps a series of belongings picked out against the morning they had been prepared to leave, witness against that fact, would carry back a sprig of lilac against the darkness of an interruption, who listened while their lover breathed or breathes, who breathes. Anybody would imagine sleeping, who was watched over, or perhaps was watching as a person slept their last, who was carried before that fact, and who might make their love song a proposition, who was lifted perhaps in isolation, who remembered they had the stamina to act, who speaks or who would start. Anybody imagine speaking, or perhaps had found themselves against the outline of a person's voice, who had listened toward that sound. And when that day the people assembled, when the line formed out of intimacy, who made some noise. Whether alone or in community. This song is to anybody, whether alone or in community, those keeping or in observance, those who shall be held. It is from the trees who listen out, to those as well in association, from the ground as the season falters, in recognition everywhere, as call to change. Anybody who seeks, against perhaps the backdrop of the mountains, set forth solely for the purpose susceptible to any act, who would be held as once they had, whether political or jurisdictional, at the time, even when it was committed, at its dissolution, turned back. To anybody who stands or who had imagined standing, watching the roof smoke against the perimeter, witnessing the Constitution fall, who knows at dead of night that this is actually the circumstance within the burden of each state, who is denied the law, who would act or would be held. Anybody shall be subjected in the quiet before it was applicable, who stood listening to the birds, or pictured that he might, imagining a full equality as he carried that acoustic, waiting as the language turned. To anybody who sleeps, whether alone or with belongings, who occupies the background as the earth curves, who stands this dead of night, whether left or in association, at that time when it is committed, who would walk towards. Thank you. Solidarity.
To live this empire is the wiped mouth, ridiculous in its motherfucking, the TV's bitter squealing. Darling, it is the obvious gun shot framed by a child's totaled gut, the clammy wasteland inside a song. With penalties etched into our slouched mentality, numb from the bollocking, we are grim nostalgiacs running up the hill again and again. We are writhing, maggot mauled by the workings of its fever. To live this empire, inseminate the sorry herd, redistribute insomnia, outsource our splendid enmity. Be a philosophized doll, a droll puppet, be a seasoned bitch in a hay-smelling skirt. Somewhere behind the mouth, the black sirens are coming home to roost. That pig brought his heel down on my shoulder, pain bloomed like a greased rose. I'll be a girl, pink expendable, a syrupy utopia. Do drink the smoky hooch of policy warm, will gout your welcome with rumours of ketamine, GHB, puke your eternal sunshine up in pretty stepping, speak your broken ankles. Kiddo, he prowls the implausible Trafalgars of the mind, is anywhere we do not arm our daughters. Bikovexani, both ghost and witch, recite the rich white bones of Trader Joe's, summon devil birds, divine chimera, all our mythy griefs, severe as fever stone. Lakeen, girl child, flesh-toned arc of follies, to live this empire, fret the silky skin from you, be a new broom unbidden in its sweeping, or hag with ample candy the razor treacles sup, to love this empire, and make yourself as flood as fragment in diagrams of coming arson. Your foes are many, in the capital cosplay of their crowns, and the carbon hymns of chimneys, the alphabet's implicit in an animal's scream. They sealed the houses against their hauntings. Ghosts mutter their never through inadequate masks in doorways. The paper wasp masticates an oor, and the censor's pen erases a soldier's legs from the ground up or the waist down to save him the bother of kneeling. All the breathtaking males they raise upon plinths for the parasite centenary sing the shinered eye rolling like a miser's guinea. This is the empire. Bloodlet for the long watch, her green sleeves surveilled, veiled and surviving, but only just. World of sinister pinpricks, nervous strain, the very straight, the normative, dutiful. Death and petrol are always with us. The steel toe romance of industry, the north and its palsied dialectic goes down swinging against empire aflame, a small, deliberate genie, the aroused gaze repelled from heaven against empire, only tinned fruit, white bread, all us tenement Charlies, the madams and the maids, to live this empire, a strong stomach, red petals pinned to our ecstasy, a dream of return, the green floor gutted in a reissued light, courage, fear allayed, obedience alloyed. Rise, Lakeen, face down the corny doom of riot police and the porcelain penchants of middle-class mantles. You are no China shepherdess, unbutton the soiled housecoat made from the starry flax of your mother's mother, the netherworld, the Neverland, the now remade. Us, descendants of the rebels, they couldn't hang. Thank you.
Hello. Ahlan. My name is Antoine Cassar and I'm connecting from Malta. I would have liked to do this recording outside, but the weather doesn't permit it. My idea was to stand next to a prickly pear tree because the prickly pear is a Palestinian symbol of sumud. Sumud meaning steadfastness or resilience. In the cartoons of Mohammed Sabane, published by Saki, for example, the prickly pear is very present as this symbol of sumud. I'm going to read a poem in Maltese and then an English translation, and I'd like to dedicate it to three Ghazawis I know in particular: my good friend Ateh al-Shair, the poet Hayat al-Mudun, and Asir el-Sakka. You may know them. All three of them in the past month have lost family in Gaza, and which is very difficult to fathom. It leaves one lost for words. And this is where poetry comes in. We find words again in poetry, metaphor, a quickening of the spirit, and a speaking of truth to power. Ateh al-Shair wrote an article in Al Arabi Al Jadid after he received the news from home, where he concludes, "If only we were dreams, not dreamers." And this is something that has stuck with me ever since. So in solidarity and in sumud, this poem is called Chomb, which means lead. Jixirfu min taħt il-mejda, issorru ftit ħwejjeġ ftit larinġiet żejda, iġġorru lit-tifel bl-orsi mħanxar fil-wejda, immorru lejlal għal-ken ta' ġol bejta, ikorru bil-frak tal-ħġieġ ħireġ imħeġġeġ mit-tifqija tal-moskeja mejta. Tixref minn ġod daħna tajjar, tidwi ħemdet żewġa wara l-istar, miksi bit-trab qed jirtab u jikdar, jikwi dembina fuq ksieħ li żar li laqqas jibki ma jiflaħ, la fommu ma jiftaħ fil-kuritur fur tal-isptar. Xħela ta' ħin, xħela ta' ħajja, xħela ta' ħniena bla sliema titlajja, mill-beraħ tas-sema, mill-wesa tal-bajja, bombi ta' ċomb minn ġotom bla ġarrajja, battalja battala, bla tpattija tissajja, duħħan ġo duħħan, dbajja fuq dbajja. Lead. They come out from under the table, gather a few clothes, a few extra oranges, carry their boy with the headless bear in his hand, leave toward the shelter of their field, are wounded by the burning fragments of glass exploded from the dead mosque. She comes out of the cotton wool smoke. Her husband's silence echoes behind her veil, covered in dust turning soft and green. Her son's blood burns on the cold of the sheet, with no strength to cry, nor to open his mouth in the overflowing corridor of the hospital. Such a waste of time, such a waste of life, such a waste of pity relentlessly postponed. From the open skies, from the breadth of the bay, bombs of lead from a long-threaded lottery, a futile battle where no revenge awaits. Smoke into smoke, stains upon stains. In Sumud and in solidarity from Malta. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Caroline Bergvall. I'm reading today an excerpt from the long poem by the Lebanese-American poet Ateh Adnan, To Be in a Time of War. To hear a war from far away, for others, to bomb, eliminate a country, blow up a civilization, destroy the living, to exit from one idea, to enter another, to go, to cross the Golden Gate, to enter San Francisco, to stop at the light, to enjoy the luminosity of the green, to be on Market Street, to see too many policemen, to be told to keep going, to see young men being arrested at the end of the march, to measure tension in the air, to seek Valencia, to go all the way to Connecticut Street and park the car, to enter through the gate of CCAC, to sit in a room which is dark, to listen to a poet, then to another, speak about a time gone. To stop at the gas station and fill up the tank, to go uphill, peek at Mount Tamalpais, to take a rest, breathe, contemplate, to find a path and walk on wet ground, to enjoy the enormous variety of the shades of green on the mountain, to raise one's eyes to the sky and bring them back on the horizon, to compare the different grays of the sky, to try to speak to the clouds, to say, yes, it's impossible, to linger on the mystery of communication, to bemoan its absence, to say it's okay, then not to believe oneself, to think of the morning news, to be horrified, to despise, to hate, to empty one's head of overflowing emotions, to regret that evil exists, to blame oneself for the existence of evil, to want to forget about it and not be capable of so doing, to wrap oneself with death, to turn the page without moving into a new life, to put on the radio, to listen and be hit in the face with much poison, to curse the hour, the fire, the deluge and hell, to lose patience, to lynch misfortune, to prevent the trajectory of inner defeat from reaching the center, to resist, to stand up, to raise the volume, to learn that the marches against the war are growing in number, to admit that human nature is multifaceted, to know that war is everywhere, to drink some water, to admit that some do win, to turn in circles, to pretend that one is not spent out, to believe it, to pretend, to discuss with one's heart, to talk to it, to quiet it down, if possible, to curse the savagery of the technologically powered new crusades, to remain in doubt, to come out of it in triumph. to extinguish the light in the eyes of those who love the world, to threaten life itself, to impose death, that's war. To pour blood in the Euphrates and kill the inhabitants of the Tigris's banks, to displace hills, to wipe out an open market, to make it impossible to get married, to sleep, to get up one morning in Basra while they do such things in other places, to meddle with Arab destiny, to anticipate the death, the wheeling and dealing, to pray to the ancient gods, to not despair about the past, to not forget, to be sure that someday, no one knows when, justice will prevail, to know that the world will take revenge for having been fooled, to keep knowing that there are mysteries and secrets, to dream of deserts, to count the cactuses and all venomous plants. Bless you all.
Thank you very much, Caroline. And thank you to all the poets who have read so far. Up next, we have a couple of videos from Jèssica Pujol Duran, Richard Parker, and Gala Parker Duran.
Ni no l'aigua vessa, ni no catàstrofe. A la costa d'Izmir, Aleppo mira Lesbos, Lesbos mira Europa i Safo és el bosc petrificada. Ni no relats inadaptats als efectes, no ens deixem fer, ni no, només no. Lluny del tran a prop, Artemisa desfà nits, Apolo descuida el sol, la lluna vesteix de dol. I els ulls neguen i l'aigua vessa, ni no la sang embogit en els circuits, ni no els aspersors esquitxen cadmi a les fulles d'herba. Aquí no hi ha els vostres pensaments, pensaments estancats. Aquí sols la terra ferma i el mar. El cel s'acaba aquí. Sentiu el límit d'Europa sota els peus, sentiu una lleu pulsació, el flux i el reflux de l'emoció indefinida, les veus d'invisibles banquers, les vagues i vastes suggestions dels mitjans, les síl·labes que sequen la ferida, la mala flaire, el greu cruixit de les basses, el ritme angoixant, la limitada vista i el boirós horitzó, la llunyania. Tot és aquí, i aquest poema és el nostre mar, ni no. Ossos calcificats, ni no. Les cavitats del plor, els líquids espessits no troben excreció. Aire, l'altra riba, una pausa, ni no. I tu i jo engolim imatges, crits no palpats, visions silents a la superfície de cristall on l'ara i sempre remolins de la geu en passen vidres verds, tentacles embrollats, xarxes i plàstics i basses i bancs de meduses i el velló d'or i sirenes, ni no, ni no.
Bring up Bethlehem. This is my dream. I'm in abstract, passing over the city. My perspective is unclear. From the forests, in the hills, over the suburbs that look down on the centre, up and down the old streets. And as in a vision, I see society laid out. The president, a cat, stupid like a cat, a toy with the people, the mice I see chanticleer. In the still woods, winter in summer, faint mist and crow calls, sun cooler under the leaves. The city splendid as if in a dream. Faint traces in the mulch, light lines in the trees, while the long march down from the pass is over in an instant. Grass waves where it's not yet trodden down, around God's righteous roundabout. We sorted out the snacks for the cabildo. We arranged the soft drinks for the cabildo. And from the forest, the multitude, between the trees, the mobile cabildo, between the trees skipping flames, Sean was there, a flame among the branches. I imagined myself at the Plaza de la Dignidad, imagined myself at the cabildo, the disgraced ex-minister there, the poet Ho Chi Minh, all the ambivalent remittances of poetry, craft, so long to learn, life so short, while at the other end of the city, the hysterical cops were throwing a man into a pit, and he got electrocuted and died down there. From the forests trickles dignity. Chanticleer was at the Cabildo, Coco Roco, while the cops burnt the trees and the city burning all over tonight. Smash our way into JD Sports and have our Cabildo there. The loud, sweet sound. Cops burnt down the cinema, the university, the Violetta Parra Museum, their own cop church, opened up torture chambers in the metro, burnt down the stations with the bones from the last time still there beneath, gassed me at work and at home and in the forests, in the canyons, above, below, beyond the city. The trumpets ring and the third day broke, bleak and windy. At sunrise the Ents' voices rose to a great clamour and then died down again. As the morning wore on, the wind fell and the air grew heavy with expectancy. The hobbits could see that Quickbeam was now listening intently, although to them, down in the dell of his Ent house, the sound of the moot was faint.
Thank you all. That was a fantastic segment from all of our readers. I'm now going to hand over to the Argentinian poetry segment.